Well, hello folks. Glad you could be with me. I want to tell you a little story. And don't think I've ever told you this one. I'll have to shorten up a whole lot to what it really is. But anyhow, I don't think I've ever told you all that I've gold prospected from the time I was 18 to present. I got hooked on gold mining when I was in the Air Force down at Montgomery, and a guy by the name of Scrappy Collins. Well, everybody called him Scrappy, and that's what he wanted me to call him. But he was kind of like a father figure to me one time I was in the Air Force, teaching me the aspects of mining gold. And my wife didn't even know I'd done this because she thought I was crazy. Everybody would have if I'd mentioned it, because nobody thought there was any gold left. But he had a hard rock mine there in Coosa County, Alabama, and I'm going to tell you about it. And if you want to read about it, you can go into Angel Fire and look up, angelfire.com, Kentucky Gold Mine / Kentucky Gold or something like that. I'll make a copy of it and put it in one of the videos. I never thought about doing that, or I'd have done it for this one, but I'll get the exact figures. That's been on, ever since they started being able to use computers, it's been on the internet for years. Because people used to order information from me to how I got started in gold, and then how to amalgamate your gold and get it out of the amalgamation, and how to separate that from black sands and all, and how to pan, everything like that's in that, how to use the chemicals, and it was in that that page. And I reset it every year for the number of people that visit it, and I have anywhere from 7,000 to 8,000 all the time looking at it and making copies of it. But that's another story. Along about 64, not too long after me and my father-in-law had went on a deer hunt, and we only had about 3 hours to hunt, and he thought I'd got lost, but I got a deer and I couldn't come out the way I went in. I had to take a logging road on up to the blacktop, and it took me about an hour after dark to get there, and so forth. But it's on YouTube or TikTok if you want to look at it. But I was by myself. I was deer hunting up in Coosa River County. Actually, it was Kimberly Clark Corporation land that they had leased for, I guess they had a 100-year lease or longer on it, but they'd been leasing on it for years. And all you had to do was go up and pay $3 for a permit, and you could hunt on it, go mine on it, whatever you want to do. And of course I didn't know this at this particular time, but I had a permit to hunt on it. And so I had this point that I had been scouting out, and it had a deer crossing 4 different ways onto that point. And I was sitting about 10 yards from that crossing with the wind in my face, and There was fresh tracks all around it the night before. Some of them were mine because I was out there walking around the night before. But back before they started making doe lures and deer lures and calls and stuff, I made my own deer lure, which I'd drain the bladder of a doe deer when I'd get it, and take the pee out of it, and put it in a plastic bottle about that tall, and had a little tube on out of it, a little cap on top of it where you could pour out what you wanted. And I'd scrape the hormone glands and put inside of this from a doe that was in heat when I killed it. And I had probably a pint of that mixture, and I rubbed it on my face and on my hands. I smelled more like a doe deer than a doe deer did, probably. But another thing, I wouldn't eat no meat for a month before I'd go to start hunting for deer, because they can smell a human, because he smells like a meat eater, carnivore, which he is. But if you don't eat it and you've got it out of your system, they won't smell it. And that's probably one of the best things about stopping to eat, because there's no scent there for the carnivore. And a lot of people don't know that, but we had to do it the hard way back in the old days, and we had to make our own calls and use our own little tricks, and that was one of them. And when I was talking about walking up and roping a deer, that was one thing I would do. During deer season, I never eat meat. Always just vegetables and stuff like that. But it paid off. When I was in Alabama, I averaged, every day that I went deer hunting, I averaged getting a deer, sometimes two. And I'd give them to the orphanages there in Alabama when I wasn't wanting to eat one myself. But that's another story. When I got on this point, it was about around 45 minutes before daylight. And I done everything by compass, so I didn't need a flashlight or anything. And didn't have to worry about too many snakes, although it was warm enough for them. But this particular point was pretty well open, and as long as you just walk at a normal pace in the woods, they would pull back rather than strike you at night or in the dark, and you almost had to step on them to get bit. And so anyhow, I got on my point there, and I was sitting there and watching it, and I wasn't wanting a doe. I was wanting to get a buck this particular time, because I needed a new set of rattlers. I'd accidentally lost a set of horns that I used as a rattler. I think in a move that I made when me and my wife got married, I think I lost them in that move, or somebody just took them. I don't know which. But anyhow, it got in daylight about started getting daylight about 6:15, and by 6:45 it was the sun was getting ready to show, and I just sitting there peaceful, enjoying the scenery, and had saw a couple little does, nothing big. Of course, there ain't no big deer in Alabama back at this time. Once in a great while, you get you might get one with a pretty good rack, have 10, 12 points, but it'd still be a small deer. Not like what they have up in the northern part of the countries. And So I don't know, it was about 9:30 or quarter to 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. All of a sudden, I heard the darndest explosion I'd ever heard. And I never heard nothing to equal it until I got over Nome. But it rained down gravel and stuff on me. It probably wasn't over 10 to 15 seconds, if that long. But it seemed like a minute. And I got to thinking just as soon as they quit showering the gravel and stuff down on me, I said, boy, I said, somebody might have got hurt in that. That had to be a bomb or a dynamite explosion. And so I got up and dusted myself off and started working my way forward down the point, and kind of off to the right of the point just a little bit from where the direction of the sound came from. And I don't know, I'd walked about 110 yards maybe, and I could hear somebody sound like they was scraping gravel up in a shovel and putting it in a wheelbarrow. I said, boy, it's a weird sound for out in the middle of the woods. And I walked another 50 yards and I started seeing the lower floor of this little valley or hollow. It's more like a valley than it was a hollow because it's kind of wide. And as I got down there, I could see where this explosion came from. There was an old fellow there actually doing what I thought it was, scraping up gravel and stuff, putting it in a wheelbarrow. And I walked over to him and got his attention. I said, sir, are you all right? He said, well, why wouldn't I be? I said, well, I heard that explosion, and I said, I was afraid somebody got hurt in that. I didn't know what it was or didn't even know there's anybody down in here. He said, well, son, that was my explosion. I said, well, what are you dynamiting? He said, well, I'm a gold mining. I said, gold mining? I said, I didn't think they done that anymore. He said, yeah, says a lot of it being done, more than it was back in the early 1800s or middle 1800s during the 49ers. And he said, but we find it nowadays. He says they didn't find a whole lot to what was out there. He said they just roughed up the ground a little bit and found some, but very few got rich off of them because they didn't know what they was doing. Well, I had heard that, but I didn't know nothing about it myself, so I wasn't wanting to judge anybody but whether they made it or not. But anyhow, he said, ain't you ever seen a gold mine? I said, no. I said, I didn't even know they still done that. And he said, yeah, you thought they'd all got it all, didn't you? I said, yeah. He said, well, so there's plenty of it. He said, if you want to see what gold looks like, he said, you be back here at 4 o'clock. And you go on about your hunt and come back here at 4 o'clock and I'll let you watch me clean up and I'll show you some gold. I said, all right. Well, we ended our conversation there. Of course, we'd introduced ourselves. And but I went on back to my hunt, and I done more thinking about gold than I did about hunting. I didn't get one that day. I saw several, but I'd see them when it was too late because I was having my mind in air on that gold mining, and I wouldn't notice them till they'd be going past me. So anyhow, about a quarter to 4, I got up and I headed on back down toward where he was at. And got there just in time. I hollered at him and I said, well, I'm back. He said, well, you're just in time. I just shut my engine off. And he said, we'll clean up and I'll show you what gold looks like. Well, he turned the water off on his machine and everything. He had water coming out of the lake, which is just about 150 feet from where he was at. He pumped water to another hole that he had dug to make a little pond out of it, two of them in fact. And he let the water, when it that pumped up from the main lake, which was probably, I said 150, it was probably 100 or 125 yards. But he'd pump it up there. He had best I remember, it was half-inch pipe, and I can't remember what kind of, some kind of plastic pipe. I guess it was back when they first started making this plastic pipe for water and farm equipment and stuff like that for the farmers to use to get water up to their stock and stuff. But anyhow, he had invested quite a bit of money for back then for that pumps and so forth. And he would pump it up and run it through what he called a high banker. And then when it run out the bottom of the high banker, it'd run into that first little pond, and then it'd run into another little pond. And that second little pond was pretty much clear to what the first one was. And they were settling based on what it was, and then after the water turned clear, he kind of held it back with a couple boards, and when the water come clear, he'd pull the top one up and let that water run back into the lake, which clear as a bell, wasn't nothing in it. So he got his pads and stuff out of the bottom, his ripples, he called them, out of his machine. It was a homemade high banker, and let me tell you something, it caulked to go. I watched him pull pickers out of there. Wasn't no big ones. Most of them about, the biggest one be about that bigger square or off angle, whatever shape it was, but he pulled quite a few of them off the header box of the what they call nugget trap. And he showed me how to clean that up, and he had burlap sacks in the bottom of that thing. It caulked to gold, the fine gold. And when he got all done, he took the top burlap piece and washed it off in a I think it was a bucket, a short bucket. He got it in there and worked it up and down, got all that stuff out of it. He called concentrate. And then he took it and put his machine back together after he got all the concentrates out of it. And he said, come on, says, let's go over here to the watering hole, and says, I'll show you how to pan this out. Well, he had a trough made out of wood that he had some kind of solvent around it to close the cracks up, and he'd pour his water in there out of 5-gallon buckets and use it to pan in. And that's what he called it, his panning trough. And he started panning those concentrates out, and he had a metal pan, copper pan, I believe it was, best I can remember. And it wasn't no time he had that first pan down. He said, there you are. He said, look at that. And there was a steady stream of fine gold in the corner of that pan at the bottom. And right in front of that pan, he'd taken like a ball peen hammer and put that over a hollow point in a piece of wood and rounded a concave in the bottom of that pan, and that gold would settle in that concave, and it was almost 3 inches long and concaved on the bottom. And when he washed the water off that concave, he had almost a quarter of an ounce in that first pan. And he got about the same amount all the way down until he panned his last pan. And he said, now we ain't going to throw these concentrates away. He said, I'll go through them again when I get home. He says, I got a machine that'll take every little piece of speck of fine gold out of that, the best you can get it, almost 95% of it, he said, we can get out with what I got at home. But I didn't get to see that part at that time. I had later, because I went up to his house. He lived in Cullman, Alabama, quite a drive from where we was at, 40, 50 miles, maybe a little farther. And I can't remember just exactly how far it was. But Coosa River was up north of where I was stationed at in Maxwell, quite a ways. And I drove it every day for a long time. But when he got all of his gold, he had two little valves, about like that. Each one of them held an ounce. And he had an ounce of fine gold in each one of them, and he had another one that was full of little pickers, nuggets. Anything you could pick up with your finger was a picker nugget or a bigger nugget. But I think all of them that he found was about a quarter inch in size and maybe a little bigger, not much. But he had roughly I believe it was 3¼ ounces that day. And he said, now tomorrow we'll get a little bit more off that because this was mostly the stuff that just fell down last. He said the heavy stuff hit the ground first, and he said we'll get that in closer we get to the concrete here. He had that fixed so when it blowed out of the hole in the mine, he had a thin slab of concrete poured on top of a piece of plywood. Now, I don't know exactly why he done that or anything, but I learned later on. And he had that in the front of that hole for everything he blowed out to get into that. And of course, the first thing to hit it was the gold. And when I went back the next day, he invited me back the next day, and he had almost 5 ounces that come out of the rest of them blowout that he made. And but he told me that first day, he said, do you think you'd be interested in learning how to mine gold? And I said, yes, sir, I would. And I said, with my work schedule, I can be up here just about every day. I said, sometimes I might have KP or something on a day or on a weekend, but he said, I said, I can be here just about every day. I said, because I work a swing shift right at this time, and on the days I'm off, I ain't got nothing to do but walk around with a clipboard and look like I'm busy. And I'll go into another story later on and tell you about that clipboard and why I done that. But anyhow, I told him, I said, he invited me to come back the next day, and I said, I'll be here. And I didn't hunt no more much the rest of that year unless Boyce wanted to go, and I'd come up with him, and I didn't come up anymore by myself to deer hunt. I just done it to be with him and Eddie, my brother-in-law. But I spent a lot of time in the Coosa River and the Clark holdings up there of mining gold. And after I done that just about every day that I could for 3 to 4 months. And it was somewhere around, I'd been there about 6 months, and we got through cleaning up. Now, he had taught me a lot in that 6 months. And a lot of times he'd be sick because he was an elderly man. He'd be sick, and I'd go ahead and work the mine with him not there. And I had learned how to pan, and I'd get the gold out of it. Now, I didn't get what was in the black sands he took home and worked out when he took all the concentrates home, but I had it all there for him. So at the end of or the first of 6 months, I don't know which it was, but I'd been there I was on my 6th month, and when we got done that day, he handed me 2 ounces of gold. And I said, "What's this for? What do you want me to do with it?" He said, "That's yours." He said, "You to keep that." He said, "From now on, you get an equal share of everything we find." And he said, "You've earned it. You've learned how to do a good job mining. You mined it when I wasn't here, and you kept it going." And he said, "You deserve every bit you get. And from now on, you're getting an equal share." Well, we found anywhere from 3 to 6 ounces every day for a long period of time. Once in a while, we'd run out of the main vein and have to go left, right, or up or down to get back on it. But he had a way to work that out, and it didn't take long. And we'd follow that vein right on through. And that was in the latter part of, or say middle summer of '64. And because I was a bow hunting the day that the explosion occurred, and I'd worked all the way up into the fall and part of the first of '65. And I worked that way for him, all the way through until I got orders for Vietnam in September of '66. And which was about a year and 5 or 6, 7 months, something like that. And I had accumulated a little over I'm wanting to say it was 160 some ounces that I had put in a vault at the bank there in Montgomery. And I had a safe deposit box, a large one, that I rented, and I paid on it by the year. And when I went to Vietnam, I had to leave it there, and so I paid it for a head for 2 years, or 3 maybe, whatever it was. I can't remember, a long time ago. But when I come back from Vietnam, the first place I headed for was Vietnam. It was Montgomery, Alabama. And I went to Montgomery Bank, and I had a leather satchel with me, and I got all that gold out and put in that leather satchel and put it in the trunk of my car. And I was getting stationed at K.I. Sawyer, and so I came up to my dad's, and Dad had a 2,000-pound safe, and which is it was that big inside, and had a couple compartments in it that locked. It was about that size, and I put all that gold in that safe, and